Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It is expensive to live here in America's finest city, and that is why a San Diego City Council committee will be considering a new proposal to raise the minimum wage for tourism and hospitality workers. KPBS video journalist Matthew Buller heard from both sides about the proposal.
According to the San Diego Tourism Authority, their industry has a $22 billion impact on our region, and 1 out of every 8 San Diegans works in it. Now, Sean Elo Rivera is proposing a $25 an hour minimum wage for those workers. Councilmember Elo Rivera says this is not an original idea.
LA just raised their minimum wage to $30, a goal of $30 an hour for tourism workers. Long Beach has a higher one.
But tourism industry leaders say this is bad for their business. Chris Cate, president and CEO of the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce, says this could cripple San Diego's economy.
At some point in time, you're going to see the negative impacts of these mandates, whether it's automation, cutting jobs, or businesses picking up and leaving and shuttering their doors.
Steve Pinard owns Action Sports Rental.
We have 6 locations. In the summer, we probably have 150 employees, maybe.
Pinard says if he's forced to pay his employees $25 an hour, he'll close.
My business will shut down under this proposal. I cannot absorb that.
Elo Rivera says this argument is old and doesn't hold water.
San Diego is better than the sky will fall arguments whenever we begin talking about paying workers a fair wage. Every single time, workers ask for a decent wage to keep a roof over their head and food on their families' plates.
According to a 2022 Tourism Authority study, the average wage for a tourism worker is $28 an hour, $3 more than the proposed minimum wage. The proposal will be brought before the Select Committee on Addressing Cost of Living tomorrow. Matthew Buller, KPBS News.
Today, San Diego County supervisors unanimously passed an $8 billion budget for the next fiscal year. But as KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen explains, the county is bracing for the anticipated cost shifts from the federal budget.
Hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
That's what Supervisor Monica Montgomery Stepp said before she voted for the budget. This is a revised budget based on community feedback after the initial budget was released in May. Supervisor Jim Desmond praised the county's Chief Administrative Officer, Ebony Shelton, for creating a balanced budget.
There's a lot I like about this $8.6 billion budget. For example, the largest increase, $149 million going to public safety. As it should, for sheriff services, jail improvements, and for opioid enforcement programs.
The $8.63 billion budget was increased by $18.3 million, with most of it going toward public safety. It also includes $800,000 for an LGBTQ plus housing program, $600,000 for a domestic violence program, and a $4.1 million increase, including road improvements and flood control. But there are also cuts. The budget decreases county staffing by 191 positions, mostly through attritions, eliminating vacant spots, and streamlining operations.
This budget does a really solid job of trying to balance our budget in a really difficult time. I think it does do a good job of really investing in recruitment and retention of the most important part of our county, which are our county workers.
But the county is also bracing for possible cuts from the federal government in the Trump administration's One Big Beautiful Bill. On a 3-to-1 vote, the supervisor also passed a federal budget readiness plan.
I just want to, flag that we have to continue to monitor the federal and state activities because they certainly will have a major impact on our county and particularly our most vulnerable.
The federal budget is being debated in the Senate. If passed, it would also cut the Affordable Care Act's Medicaid expansion, creating a $10 million shortfall for the county's behavioral health services. It would also shift $276 million in CalFresh food benefits to the county. The federal fiscal year starts on October 1st. The board is directing the CAO to present a fiscal analysis with funding options by September 30th. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
Well, it's another relatively mild night ahead. We're dropping down to the low 60s, still dealing with some of those intermittent high clouds, and low clouds because of the marine layer are going to continue to be an issue. It'll just kind of ebb and flow as far as how far inland it gets from day to day over the next couple of days. But I'll break down exactly what to expect for the rest of the week ahead coming up.
Hours after President Donald Trump announced a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, Israel struck a radar site north of Tehran. The move angered Trump and threw the ceasefire agreement into turmoil. Jen Sullivan is tracking the latest on the conflict.
The night sky in Tehran lighting up as Israel launched attacks on Iran hours after a ceasefire was expected to take effect. The situation infuriating President Donald Trump, who helped facilitate the ceasefire between Israel and Iran.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.
Right before the ceasefire went into effect, Iran launching missiles at a residential building in Beersheba, Israel.
We arrived, it's a completely mess in this scene. There's a missile that directly hit one of the buildings. Direct strike on the top of the building.
The president of Iran releasing a statement Tuesday, according to local media, saying, quote, Tehran is ready for talks and to defend the rights of the Iranian people at the negotiation table. Adding Iran will not violate the ceasefire unless Israel does first. The current conflict began on June 13th when Israel launched multiple attacks aimed at destroying Iran's nuclear program and its military leadership. Nearly a week later, the U.S. attacked 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities in what the Pentagon called Operation Midnight Hammer. The White House saying it worked with Israel to end Iran's nuclear threat. But following this latest escalation, Trump becoming more critical of Israel.
I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload.
All of this comes as President Trump travels to the Netherlands for the NATO summit.
The world should be worried about this.
Jen Sullivan, KPBS News.
When the U.S. bombed Iran over the weekend, thousands of San Diego-based troops were already on station in the Middle East. KPBS military reporter Andrew Dyer says deployments to the region have again become routine.
They possess considerable tactical capability.
Vice Admiral Brad Cooper tells the Senate Armed Services Committee today about the threat Iran's military poses to U.S. forces in the Middle East. Cooper is the deputy commander of U.S. Central Command, which oversees military operations in the region. He's been nominated to become its commander. 6 San Diego-based Navy warships are now under Cooper's authority in the region. The aircraft carrier USS Carl Vinson deployed 7 months ago. Its deployment was extended in March when it was redirected to the Middle East. The Navy's maintained a steady carrier presence in the region since October 2023 when Hamas attacked Israel. The Vinson's been involved in strikes against Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen, but were not part of the weekend bombing inside Iran. That was Air Force B-2 bombers. The San Diego littoral combat ship USS Canberra is also now in the region. That's notable because it's the first LCS to deploy with a long-delayed mine countermeasure mission package. That's something Cooper says is needed.
Iran has thousands of sea mines. It's a fairly narrow area. We do have a sufficient and the largest mine force in the world presently in the Middle East.
It's not clear when the Vinson might return home. Carrier deployments average about 6 months. Relief could be on the way. The East Coast-based carrier USS Gerald Ford left Norfolk today for its own scheduled deployment. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
Dozens of people protested outside UC San Diego Health in La Jolla one day after hundreds of employees lost their jobs. Our media partner KGTV was there today as current and former employees formed a picket line. 230 people were laid off at the hospital yesterday. One employee says the hospital has already been dealing with a staffing crisis, impacting patient wait times and limited appointments.
Clinical lab scientists who even before the layoffs were saying that they were concerned that because of staffing was so limited that they were going to be making the possibility of errors would be high.
A new nationwide study shows Medicaid, the health insurance program Okay, so UC San Diego Health said in a statement that the layoffs were in response to financial pressure caused by federal impacts to health care. And a new nationwide study shows Medicaid, the health insurance program for low-income Americans, isn't just about health coverage. It saves lives. But with lawmakers pushing massive cuts to the program, KPBS health reporter Heidi DeMarco says the safety net could unravel for the more than 880,000 people who rely right on it in San Diego.
New research shows when people gain access to Medicaid, they are less likely to die. Researchers from the National Bureau of Economic Research tracked 37 million low-income adults who gained access to Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. They found a 21% reduction in the risk of death for those who enrolled. Bruce Meyer co-authored the study.
We looked at what we thought of as the most pronounced, most grave outcome when you cut health insurance, and that's mortality.
Meyer says that previous studies focused on smaller, older, or sicker groups. This one followed a broad age range from 25 to 59 years old. It found that Medicaid is critical for saving young people's lives.
A reduction in mortality for someone in their 20s translates to many more life years saved.
Researchers also found Medicaid is cost-effective, saving lives at about $5.4 million each. Myers says that's well below what's typically spent in public health. This study is part of a growing body of evidence showing Medicaid is a lifeline, says UC San Diego health economist Todd Gilmer.
It funds, federally qualified health centers, community health centers, rural hospitals, community hospitals. So it's a really important part of our safety net.
The U.S. Senate is debating a federal bill that would slash Medicaid funding by more than $800 billion. Meyer warns the cuts could leave millions uninsured.
That's going to lead to increased deaths.
Meyer says the choice isn't just about balancing budgets.
You have to decide whether the cost savings are worth the increased mortality, and that's a judgment that Congress is implicitly making.
Experts say if the cuts go through, the effects will show up in clinics, in ERs, and in the lives of people who could lose access to care proven to save them. Heidi DeMarco, KPBS News.
Transportation officials are considering relocating the train tracks in Del Mar away from the collapsing bluffs. But KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says rail advocates fear the project could lock in slower and more polluting trains to Los Angeles.
I take Coaster down here. I take Metrolink to visit my girlfriend in Orange County. I love taking it. Beats beating, driving through traffic and having to deal with that, especially during peak hours. Peak hours driving sucks on the 5.
Brian Legal lives in North County and is a big fan of riding the train. I meet him on a hiking trail that overlooks the single track along the Del Mar Bluffs.
I think it's just how convenient it is and the beautiful scenic views that are in SoCal's rail network, and just being able to hop on a train and see all my friends who live in San Diego or up there and get a good ocean view on the way.
Being a train rider in San Diego is not easy. These are the only tracks that connect San Diego to Los Angeles and the rest of California. They're often congested or totally closed due to landslides and emergency repairs.
Yeah, even in the past month, I've visited my girlfriend twice, and I had to take the Amtrak bus, the bus bridge, in order to get there, which is very inconvenient because Amtrak costs more, and you have to hop on a bus, and it's always full. It sells out a week in advance. You can't just hop on.
Del Mar is one of the rail corridor's worst pinch points. So SANDAG, the county's transportation planning agency, is considering relocating the tracks, possibly into underground tunnels, which raises an important question. Will those tunnels be big enough for electric trains?
Electric trains are pretty much the most efficient way to move anything on land, and they're more energy efficient than other, zero emissions alternative.
Adriana Rizzo is a member of the grassroots organization Californians for Electric Rail.
The biggest benefit is that is for passenger service. So electric trains accelerate faster, so you can have short, faster trips. Like, so for example, the Caltrain cut 25 minutes off of its local service just by going from diesel to electric service. They can also go faster. So you can have these trains going up to 110, 125 miles an hour without any, the specialized upgrades you need for true high-speed rail.
Currently, all the trains on this corridor are pulled by diesel locomotives, which are slower, noisier, and more polluting. Sandag found electric trains would cut the travel time between Oceanside and San Diego to less than half an hour. That's faster than driving, even when there's no traffic. But electric trains would require a wider tunnel through Del Mar to accommodate the overhead wires that power the trains. And a wider tunnel would be more expensive.
Part of our shared use agreements in particular is to make sure that travel times are not increased.
Mary Dover is a spokesperson for the North County Transit District, which owns the train tracks and will have to maintain them, whether Sandag reroutes them through Del Mar or keeps them in place. Dover says electrifying the trains would come with a big upfront cost to install the overhead wires. Some residents also don't like how those wires look.
Also, from a maintenance perspective, making sure that we're at least aware of the costs that we will incur in the maintenance of the life cycle of this infrastructure.
Caltrans released its state rail plan in January. It aims for a transition to all zero-emission trains, but it leaves out the San Diego to Los Angeles corridor from its plans for electrification. Instead, it imagines trains powered by batteries or hydrogen fuel, technologies that are slower and less proven. Rizzo says even if there's no money to electrify the trains today, Sandag should at least leave the door open to electric trains in the future.
They're not going to be building another one of these tunnels for the next 100 years. So if they make these tunnels too small to save a little bit of money, they are, basically they're making a decision now about whether this corridor will ever be electrified. And it seems, really foolish to make that long-term decision based on, a small margin of what is already kind of an expensive project.
For Brian Legal, electric trains in San Diego would help bring back ridership that's been lost due to the constant delays and track closures. Caltrain in the Bay Area electrified their trains last year to resounding success.
Every quarter they've seen more riders take it quarter after quarter, and I don't expect that to slow down anytime soon. And seeing that and wanting to bring that down and give that a shot will, I think, improve the lives of everyone. It will take traffic off the roads. It will improve the experience of everyone, not just people on the train, but everyone commuting downtown and back.
Sandag is currently scoping out what it will study in an environmental impact report. It's accepting comments on its preliminary study through June 30th. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
While we're tracking a warming trend, continuing to see those low clouds from the marine layer, and we are also going to get back to about the ballpark of our historical averages by late weekend, the weekend, maybe even a few degrees above our historical averages where we should be this time of year. We'll start off with what to expect for tonight, though. We're dropping down to the mid to upper 50s from Escondido to Oceanside, 62 in San Diego, 67 up in Borrego Springs. You can see more of the high clouds impacting closer to the coast. Then we also have that marine layer bringing some visibility concerns with some low clouds. That continues into tomorrow morning for the low clouds. The rest of the day for some of those higher clouds intermittently. Temperature-wise, we're up to 78 in Escondido, 71 in San Diego, 69 there in Mount Laguna, and triple digits once again for Borrego Springs. Didn't get a break for long there. Taking a look at our 5-day outlook here, here's the warming trend that I was talking about. It's very subtle for the next couple of days. We're just warming by a degree or two. It's by the time we get to the weekend that, yeah, we get up into the mid-70s. Not a lot of variation here. You probably won't even notice much of a difference day to day, but we do just get back to the ballpark of where we should be this time of year with those historical averages. Further inland, we do warm up a little bit more. We get to 84 for Friday and Saturday. We also lose those clouds, so a pretty sunny and pleasant weekend ahead. Something to look forward to as we head through the rest of the work week. Into our mountain 5-day outlook, we jump from 70 to 81 Saturday to Sunday. That's probably the biggest temperature difference that we are looking at, and that's where we get to the ballpark of where we should be this this time of year with historical averages, and then even just a little bit warmer. Taking a look at our desert 5-day outlook, we are back in the triple digits, and we're staying there really for the foreseeable future. Back to the status quo, summer in the desert. We get to 108 by the time we get to Sunday, and that's when there's going to be some hazy skies as well. It's the main difference from the end of the week to kind of the start of the next week. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather's Anna Azalian.
She marched for civil rights, women's rights, and for people who pick our fruits and vegetables. She even co-founded the renowned labor union United Farm Workers with Cesar Chavez. And at 95, Dolores Werta remains active in public life, speaking at a Los Angeles ICE raids protest earlier this month. And she spoke with KPBS's Amita Sharma about today's political climate.
Dolores, you've been a community organizer, a labor organizer. You've lobbied and negotiated for people who held little power in our society. How would you describe the state of social justice in America today?
I would say it's lacking, that we're seeing that everybody's rights are being trampled, and people are coming together now to try to fight back. But I would say that social justice is in the dark right now, in the closet. It's totally gone.
What concerns you the most about what's happening right now?
Well, it concerns me that so many people's rights are being taken away from them. I mean, I think none of us, even, I'm 95 years old, and I lived right after the Depression, World War II, the 60s and the 70s, the Vietnam War, and I have never seen anything as horrific as what we are seeing now in terms of the way people here in the United States are being treated.
As you just mentioned, your activism stretches back decades, and you scored big wins. You secured aid for dependent families and disability insurance for farm workers, to say nothing about obtaining their right to organize. Given those victories, did you ever anticipate a time in the United States such as what we're seeing now?
We were forewarned before the election about Project 2025. We were told what Project 2025 including we have seen the manifestations of that right now, that yes, people, the billionaires wanted more authority and they wanted a dictatorship, and we're seeing that it's being played out. So it isn't that we were not warned. We were warned, but people didn't believe it.
Why do you think that people did not pay attention to the warnings about what might be coming down the pike?
I mean, nobody thought that anyone would ever act that way. Of course, people of color who've always been met with a lot of oppressive behavior, they know because they have lived it. But a lot of the majority of the people here did not know. But we know that we have to work very, very hard if we're going to save our democracy and even save our society at this point.
For people who are concerned about mass deportations, potential cuts to Medicaid and food stamps, the deployment of the military in response to protests, which have gotten violent at times, what is the path forward? How can they affect change?
The violence has not warranted the type of response of having the National Guard, having 4,000 troops of the National Guard coming to Los Angeles. There were some random acts of defiance, I would say, but not to the extent that they had to send in the National Guard. And right now, what we have to do is just continue to protest. I think when you had 5 million people on the streets on No King's Day, that really shows that people understand that they have the power to speak up. And we see that people are fighting back, and this is what we need.
What have you learned about the value of protests and just the overall fight for social justice over the decades that can be applied now?
Well, I am promoting very much that we go back to Gandhi and the peaceful nonviolence, the way that he was able to liberate India. Dr. Martin Luther King, the way he did to get the civil rights successful in the South, and of course Cesar and the farm workers movement. We were able to win by using nonviolence. And I know it's hard for people to understand that, but it has a power of its own.
And Dolores, you turned 95 in April. What keeps you going? What keeps you politically active?
knowing all of the work that we have to do, and we do know that our main job is to recruit more people to come into the movement, because we do know that the more of us that can participate, this is the way that we can make the changes that we need to make, and this is the way that we can win. I like to say to people, like the poet Neruda said, they can cut all the flowers, but they can't hold back the spring. They can cut all the flowers, but they can't hold back the spring. So we have to be the messengers and the gardeners, and we have to spread the seeds of truth and justice and activism out there. Si se puede.
And Amita Sharma's interview with Dolores Werta is part of our Public Matters initiative. It's a partnership with KPBS, iNewsSource, and Voice of San Diego. You can see more of our stories at kpbs.org/Public Matters.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, the White House pushes back on reports that the strikes on Iran set back its nuclear program by months, not years. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Time to take a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On NPR's Morning Edition, weeks after Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. fired the CDC's panel of vaccine advisors, their replacements will be meeting in Atlanta. And it's National Men's Health Month. KPBS Midday Edition is discussing the biggest risk factors to men's health and changes they can make to stay healthy. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.